What is good, everyone? A-Rock Oakley back with a crazy deck tech video because this is a deck I have talked about before on my channel, Han2 ECL. And I went to the Mobile PQ and I was leaning heavily into playing Cad Tarkentown. I played that to the Gaucher PQ to a top 8, but was feeling like a couple matchups just didn't line up decently well for CAD, but I knew I could pilot that deck, so I always had that in my back pocket. But Han2 ECL was a deck that I played a lot in set 2, won a 1K with it, and felt like it might be a great meta pick because I think it is really good into Han Cunning from set 1. And that led me to kind of putting a few days worth, if not like tons of hours and tons of games of testing into seeing if I could make this deck really work into this meta. It's a heavy Tarkentown meta, and that can be tough, but you know, some of the best things you can do with this deck if you're just constantly playing units, you can get them to burn their Tarkentown in an inopportune time, and then everything you play after that is pretty free and pretty safe. Even if you're cheating stuff out with Han's action, you can use that to leverage and get yourself ahead. Not to mention that, the most popular Tarkentown decks, this isn't a bad deck into Django. I think it is pretty bad into Cad and Quinn, which I think Cad and Quinn, especially on Tarkentown, um, those two decks aren't a big part of the meta share. So having a better like feeling really good into Han Cunning felt like a really good place to be with that being a prominent deck. I think that this deck does very well into the green, blue, and red version of Han 1. So that felt good. It's pretty 50-50 with Django. Django can do Django things. It feels decent into Sabine, which again feels very 50-50, which is kind of what you want your Sabine matchup to be. Um, very good into the slower ramp decks because we just apply so much pressure in the early parts. And into the hard control, we have a decent amount of smuggle options, and we can keep spamming units and applying good enough pressure. We do play cards that play well into the bounty decks of Bright Hopes. So the game plan there is just to go heavy into the ground, so you can pick things up with Bright Hope to eliminate their bounties. There was a lot of thoughts that went into this deck, and there's a lot of cards here that we'll talk about. And I want to put a big thank you out to the KTOD Discord, the Network Discord, and the Pensacola crew of people. Felomir, DJ Destar, Kevin Unruh, and the list goes on. There's so many names that I would love to. Our boy Denny. I would love to name everybody, but I'm gonna get to the cards now. But thank you all because a lot of the theory crafting, especially with Felomir, leading up to this, is we were a couple days out, and I just wanted to lock in the list, and he helped me kind of tweak a couple numbers, and it proved to be very, very good. So I went 6-0 in Swiss and was the top seed going into the top 8. Ran into a couple Djangos and Anakin Blue, which Anakin Blue is the other matchup you kind of want to avoid just because you make their Anakins really, really threatening by pushing a lot of base damage, and if you don't have an answer to close out the game just kind of ends on it can end on the spot in their favor. Palp Yellow is another deck that I played. I played Krennic on Krennic Green 30, and in top 8, one Sabine ECL that was on coverage. Go check out C Raptor's channel for that. You can see the Palp Yellow, my Swiss Sabine, and the semifinals against Sabine on Frank Soldak of the Bothan Network, the captain, if you will, of the Bothan Network. We went 3-3 on the day, but he got me in the one that really mattered in the semifinals. So still really cool. Great run. I was 7-0 going into the semis, so I felt very good. I just had to keep trusting my lines to get there. So played into a great range of decks. Was able to knock off 2 Djangos, which felt really good. I think that deck is incredibly scary. So yeah, let's talk about the cards. Leading right into our 1-drops. Clone Deserter is often a resourced card, but this is a amazing card to put down to bait out Tarkin Towns. This can be a great card to to race into Django because then they feel like they have to play something on the ground, or you're just going to kind of eliminate some of the damage that they're putting in. And it can be a free 2-1, if not a 2-3 that is somewhat difficult for um, there's crafty smugglers and other cards to deal with. So always been a great card, something we can cheat out, but a very easy resource as well whenever it's just not worth it, or it's a good card to pitch off of Poe, or even into a forced throw deck, keeping it in your hand so you have a really easy card to pitch. So there's a lot of value with this card, not only based on what it does and the drawback of them drawing a card, or the aggro deck. There's times where you just don't care about that. So I was talking with Kevin about this, my testing partner and top 8 opponent, that R2D2 may be the best card in the deck. If you could put that to Poe Dameron or Wrecker or something like that. But R2D2 makes this deck work because we are able to dig, into the boss matchup. You're able to dig for the Bright Hopes. You're able to dig to find a Poe or the Wrecker or a card we'll talk about here in a little bit. You can find cards. You can also set up if you're going to smuggle out a card. Oh, this is a card I don't care about. Leave it on top so it can get smuggled in, so you have a better likelihood to see the cards you want to see on the next turn of draws. So again, that starts to play into this, and 1/4 body, and also can help you dirtle. That's the part of where this deck starts to really work into the Han Cunning deck, is that we can play a big enough board to where we can dirtle like they do, and we can play a lot of actions, play units for free, and start to kind of weather that storm. And deploying on 5 means DJ doesn't really hurt us, and Han as a leader, he's just a 3/6. He doesn't do that much. We sometimes we'll use his action, but if he's tapped down, we'll just kind of keep playing units if we have to. It's not a big deal. So that becomes really good. So we don't really care. So we want to be able to dirtle so we can, their DJs are basically insignificant at that point, and we don't really care because the only time you're ever going to above 7 resources is if you have Timely in the row and you want to wreck her over. So you're able to do that, and that I think R2 helps with this, and Clone Deserter helps with this, being able to play something for 0, keep your resources up, and maybe have a juicy energy conversion lab after that. Reckless Gunslinger is our final 1-drop, and this is just a card that just closes games. We play 2 Fighters for Freedom as well, so this can ping for a good chunk of damage, and it's just a great card for easy smuggling. And when it's good, it's great. Also becomes in certain matchups where it's not going to be great, pull it out of the side. It's an easy 2-of to come out to put a bunch of the 2-ofs in the side. When we get down there, we'll talk about it. Battlefield Marine, go to 2-drop. Gotta play it in a deck like this. I actually think this is probably Battlefield Marine into R2D2 is the best play you can have, especially into Sabine, because you want to be able to, which you'll see if you watch the semifinals match, is Frank. I played a Sabine. He ECL'd his Sabine into my Sabine, and he survived and ran away with the game eventually down the line. So it was a big play. So Battlefield Marine is what we want to play because it is always a trade, and that's awesome, and just an incredible card. Sticking to that, typical package, 3 of Sabine Wren makes sense. Card's great, good into L3 and Crafty Smugglers, good into Village Protectors. Just a great card to have. And with this deck, because we go wide enough and we have an array of cards, we're able to turn on her ability to not be attacked pretty often, and that becomes very relevant. So Sabine's a great card. Cassian Andor also wins games. I would give it. I'd put it in the realm of like one of the, if top 5, if not top 4 or 3 cards in the deck, just because it is a 3/5 body is great into Tarkin Town decks. It can be a turn 1 play as a pseudo Battlefield Marine, and just the ability to be smuggled out. The amount of times I smuggled out a Cassian on my Han flip turn to preserve my energy conversion lab for later turns happened a lot, and that allows me to continue to apply pressure, put in 6 to the base with the Han and the Cassian swings, and keep the game going in my favor, which is fantastic. Cassian Andor, probably one of the best cards from set 2. Love to see it. Echo Base Defender is just a good wall, an efficient body at 4-3, much better on the offense, and can buy you a turn. That's why we play it. We want to see this in certain matchups, and this becomes pretty great. So, I mean, Sentinels just save games. If you watch my game into Frank in the Swiss, I slammed this to eliminate his Sabine basically from being able to attack my base and preserved enough damage for me to then close the game on the following turn. So Echo Base Defender, when timed properly, is fantastic. If you have to play it on turn 2 that dies into a Battlefield Marine or Sabine, it doesn't feel as good, but in the right settings, this card is fantastic. And if you are just applying pressure, it goes fast. So we do like this card. Fighters for Freedom has decent synergy in this deck. Plus, I really like this as a saboteur to pop shields, killing crafties, and village protectors. This card just has kind of always been a very solid unit. If we had another 3/5 in this colorway that felt worthy of playing, I might consider something else, but this is one of our best options, and I wouldn't cut this card at all. Now, my pick for best card from set 2 is Heavy, and I'm very biased because it just needed the right shell, and I do think that this is the perfect shell for it. Heavy, fantastic 4/4 for 4. We know another card that has a 4/4 for 4 with Overwhelm, which is incredibly well played, but this one can reach to being a 6/4 on attack if we have Coordinate. We can do that pretty easily. So, a couple key things of what this card can do. It's a 4/4 for 4. If we cheat it out as a 4/2, it now trades with Sabine without Coordinate. Trade because it's a 4/2, so it dies, and the wind defeated that deals 1 damage to each ground unit will hit them. That kills Sabine Leader, that kills Tech, that kills DJ, and then okay, cool. If we have Coordinate online, that kills all 6 toughness units. That's really strong. We're talking. That's a great answer to Han Leader. And the list kind of goes on. You see those 6. That 6 is sometimes hard to reach. Doesn't get buffed by red 3, but that's okay because it can attack for 6. This card does a lot. It can climb to 8 with a pump of heroic sack. That would be actually 9 if you have coordinate with the wind defeated. But then on top of that, the Adelphi really helps push this to have extra damage as well. So heavy is so good and puts the opponent into really awkward situations of they have to kind of deal with this card. And I think that I am so sold on this card as a very strong one to consider going forward. And this was a threat to a lot of decks, and they didn't necessarily know how to play against it or what to do with it, because if they used a bunch of their removal on it, it meant that the bigger stuff like the Poe, Attack Pod, Wreckers were just able to survive and thrive. So it puts people in awkward spots, and this coming down on turn 2 is pretty nuts, especially if like the turn 1 play was Battlefield Marine R2D2 into turn 2 Echo, and then you're threatening what's that, 10 damage on that following turn if they just don't deal with your units. It's quite a bit, and we still haven't used ECL, and we still have a bunch of follow-up plays, so pretty sick. K2 is a must in these colors. I feel like as a 3 of is great. Both of his modes of when defeated are insane. We do play the heroic sack, so that can lead to some pretty insane levels of damage. Another great, and so yeah, K2 is fantastic. You just gotta be playing this card. Nothing special that he's like teched for or anything, but it's just a great card. Poe Dameron is another card with Heroic Sacrifice that, keep in mind, this thing does 10 damage with Heroic Sacrifice. So that puts you into certain thresholds of, all right, 15 damage on their base, Poe Dameron on the board, all I need is a Heroic Sac or an Adelphi, with initiative, obviously. And that starts to lead to some insane play lines where you can reach lethal much faster than your opponent thinks you can. If they're smart players, they'll get there. But you can present that, and if they just can't beat that, then you have that line, so you go for it. Amazing card. Poe Dameron is one of our most commonly used ECL targets, does a lot. You'll use all three of his on attack triggers. You will do that. Be on the lookout for more opportunities to use his discard option. If that means they have one card in hand, get rid of it. Like don't get blown out by big stuff. Bill was helping me with that. DJ Death Star helping me with that. He's like, we were playing against a boss, and he's like, dude, discard my card. It's a mall. Like I can get back into this game if you don't discard it. So look for those moments. So big thanks to Bill for helping me with that one because it did come up quite a bit, and I was able to kind of rip apart my opponent's hand, especially against Krennic. I kept him off. Blake is a great player on Krennic, and I was able to kind of keep him off in one of the games, just make sure he didn't really play the game because he had a resource and then he had one card in hand, and I just Poe attack, discard your card. It was very nice for me. So Gorilla Attack Pod. This card is pretty nuts. 4/6 stat line is goaded, but one of the craziest parts about this is that if you set up your Han turn to where you're able to push to 15 on their base, you play this out on the Han turn as a 6/4, hit their base to 6. They go to 21. So if they're on a Tarkin Town or ECL, the game pretty much ends right there. If they're on a 30 HP base, you are you have Han Leader and Guerrilla Attack Pod win the game right then. They have to answer both of those, and a 6 butt and a 4 butt is not easy to do, and they have to choose one. And if anything, you're just gonna Han attack for 3, and then they've killed your pod, but then you're still deploying stuff to the board. This card is awesome. I was playing 1 in the last set, and I'm so happy I went up to 2. I just think that this card is so much better. I think Heavy filled a lot of the slots that IG was playing in old, and a few other cards were playing. That this just filled whatever that needed to do. So that was a big swing. So a Guerrilla Attack Pod becomes an additional finisher along with Poe, and of course Wrecker. Let's talk about this guy, ECO Wrecker, one of the best power plays you can do in this game. Full stop. Insane. Kills multiple units, overwhelms for a ton, kills all leaders if they don't have a sentinel in play. Does so much. This card's crazy good. Wrecker's dope. Another cool part is if you flip your Han leader out, you can play this card as a 7/4 and blow something up. Pretty good. Cheating it out early. There may be some situations where you need to cheat this out and delay your Han flip turn. Again, we don't really care about our Han flip turn that much, but still a fantastic card. A decent switch that I had from previous builds was I went a little heavier in space. This used to be a very ground heavy deck with, you could play Maz Kanata, you can play a bunch of other cards. I just don't like those cards into the current meta. You need to go bigger, you need to be value oriented I think, to stay in it. So a card that does really well with that is being able to diversify our threats. Is Green Squadron A-Wing is just an absolute beast in space and does work in any aggression heroism deck. So this was great all weekend. Fantastic card. Red 3 closes games. This won me a game in the semifinals against Frank. I had to do the math. I was tinkering hard, and I just didn't see it because I wasn't counting for it. And then when I flipped over my Han, I did the math again, and I had it. So it was great that I didn't miss that, but we saw it, we got there, and that's why you think through your lines. But keep in mind, Red 3 just makes math better, and it can be really difficult for your opponent to account for a card like this that pumps almost the entirety of the board. Very few cards that don't get pumped by this, and it's just nuts. So if a red 3 goes unchecked throughout a game, you generally win that game. So if you can stick one of these and it goes uncontested because they're dealing with all your ground units, this card will just slowly, that extra bit of damage is just so useful. So red 3's dope. 3 of Bright Hope. This is for Django. This is for Bosk. Those two situations are great. Another part of where Bright Hope really thrives is the fact that we have a couple really good 1-drops that we can play Bright Hope on 4. We can play it on 3 as a 3/4 Sentinel that picks up a card. Both great unit. Both are great things. But one of the best things we can do is on 4 resources, pick up an R2, and then play an R2 for free off of Han's action again. So we not only get to attack with the R2, see if we want to draw that card, maybe wherever it goes, and then Bright Hope it, pick it up, draw that card that maybe we wanted, and then replay the R2 to see what we're going to draw next. That gets you a lot of extra value. What I talked about, R2 being one of, if not the best card in the deck, that's a big reason why the synergy with Bright Hope is dope. So another insane space threat is Adelphi. I'm going to quickly talk through what I believe are the best reasons to be playing this card. The floor is a 4/4 in space for 4 because we cheated out as a 4/4. The next step up is it's a 4/4 that cheats an action that allows you to play a 4/4 and attack with something. Then it goes up from a 4/4 to buffing and just a raw 4/6 for 5, and then a 4/6 that cheats an action, and then a 4/6 that buffs and cheats the action, and then we play ECL and timely intervention. Now you're starting to talk about even better play lines, and that's where this card is great. This could be go up to 3, but I just don't see where. The card's great. And you don't always want to see it. It's not the best thing in every matchup, but Adelphi is amazing, and I think this is a standout card from set 2 as well. So definitely doesn't have, like I was talked about in Sabine for a little bit, but I think they are just off that. But this is a perfect place for it because being able to play it early, a 4/4 in space is a threat in this meta. It trades with everything, and does work. So Adelphi Patrol Wing, amazing card. 2 heroic sack. This is just the pump we want. It's great with again with Wrecker for 9, Poe for 10, K2 for 9, Heavy for 8, Gorilla Attack Pod for 6 or 8. So you're talking about a lot of really great situations where this works. Not to mention a lot of our 3 attack, Sabine, Battlefield Marine, Fighters for Freedom. This allows it to climb and take out 5 toughness stuff. So again, it has a lot of play and does a lot of work. Timely intervention is we want to essentially be ambushing 1 to 2 times a game. This helps ensure that. I would never go up. I don't think I'd ever go up to 3, but I would never be down to 1. So I think the 2 of is pretty spot on here for what we want to be doing. All right, so we see that we have 4 events. We are playing 46 units. You keep applying pressure, and we don't need 4 cause. We don't need other pumps. We just need these cards to continue to hit the board, to continue to apply pressure. So we're never running into a turn where we draw, like it's very rare for you to draw 2 events and then not deploy something because we have, 5 solid smuggle cards that we can play. I mean, timely being a smuggle card, but like 5 units that we can smuggle out. It gives us extra options to play and use that as our resources and as a part of our hand, which is awesome. But so amazing setup, feels very streamlined. No one-ofs or anything. It's awesome. Loving where the main board is at. 3 scanning officer. This card is for Han. You could potentially bring it in against Quinlan, but maybe it's not necessary. If you can rip their blasters, that can be, I think, is the only card you're really trying to rip from them. You don't care about L3s and other cards like that. But simply put, having this card in your going 3 of into the main makes their Han, all of the Han decks, Han 1 decks, it makes their playlines really tough because they have to be smart about how they resource, when do they go for plays. Because we don't care about DJ, we're just trying to set them back turns. So I've had points where my opponent goes Han resource on turn 1 and I just play a scanning officer, and then maybe the 3 drop they were going to play is now nullified, which is generally what they're trying to do when they resource on turn 1. So that's huge for us. Not to mention, you can dirtle actions enough to be able to play this as a 2/1 for 1 resource. So if you just leave 1 resource back and they're going to go for something, you can blow up their resources, or essentially blow up their resources, or just replace their resources with exhausted ones. That's a really big play to have. So keep that in mind as you play this card. It is mainly for Han, and I like it there. And if you don't need it, it's fine. This is just, I think, because it was a prevalent deck in previous PQs that it made sense to play this. Disabling Fang Fighter over Confiscate for sure because this also comes in against Django. Just play this as a 3/2 in space. It pops shields, which is great into the smugglers, into the 7th Fleet defenders. That's great. But we just want to have extra answers in space to maybe sometimes just trade with their stuff before they overrun our base with surprise strikes and other things. And they kind of have to deal with this by either tapping it down or something, which is great because if they're tapping this down, then that means other stuff is staying around, and that just gives us extra space presence. Now you can also play this just to remove an upgrade for 2 resources, which is one worse. Even though this will die, you still get the win played. Never really came up. This comes in against Sabine for the sabers and the general blades. Comes in for Anakin, those decks as well. I don't really care to bring this in against blaster decks. I just don't think it's necessary. We should be outpacing them in other ways. Choose sides. This is for Lukes. This is for Cads. This is for crates. This is for, well, maybe not crate, but it's just for big stuff. It's like here's a reckless gunslinger. Here's an R2D2. Thanks to the Luke, like that. That's what you're trying to set up if you can. Card's cool. I think Choose Sides does a lot of really good. If you give them a clone deserter, it's awesome because then you can claim the bounty. This comes in as a silver bullet into those big decks. Just a solid card. Very cool kind of mechanic, being able to exchange units like that. And now to our last kind of big drops was U-Wing reinforcement. Being that our math kind of works out to where we should be hitting one big value unit with something else almost always, if not playing 3 units at a time. The math is great on U-Wing. So this was a Felomir ad that he kind of really sold me on the idea. I was very big on the home ones, but because we could play this for 7, these are both 7 drops at that point. This being able to get Restore online. Both of these come in against the control decks, and if I know that the game is going to go long. I don't necessarily expect it to into the control decks, but there are games where it's just like, all right, maybe they have initiative. It's probably better to go up on these, but then maybe when you have initiative to maybe cut these and go faster. So keep that in mind that there's some things that you want to do when you have initiative and some things you want to do when you don't. Now, that's the side. Cards that usually come in and out, like I'll drop down on Bright Hopes and the Reckless Gunslingers sometimes. Fighters for Freedom if it doesn't feel necessary. Those are cards that are pretty easy to bring in and out. Against Han, it is a pretty easy swap of 3 A-Wings because it's terrible into Falcon for 3 Scanning Officers, which is great into Han, so that's a pretty easy swap. Yeah, that's kind of where this deck lives, and I think it's awesome. Like I said, I had a great run, top 4, 6-0 in Swiss, playing a deck that people wrote off for a while, and I'm really happy that I kept jamming games with this here and there, and was keeping up with the meta and how to play into it, and was tweaking it in my journeys, and I was able to kind of make a nice little hero run, and I gave myself an opportunity, and I can be proud of that. So, again, big thanks to all my testing team and partners, and yeah, really cool. If you're interested in this deck, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Discord. It's ARock Oakley on there. I'm on the KTOD, the Star Wars Botha Network. I'm all over the place. Please find me if you want to drop a comment down below. Ask any questions. Please don't hesitate. I want to share my thoughts. And as you all know, that I'm doing a building of Wedge Antilles in the aggression shell for set 4. So waiting on some more spoilers. Hopefully we get some good rebels or some ships or something, some cool pilots to be considering going forward. But Han did work this weekend, and I'm just stoked to be able to showcase a deck that I still love, and I will be making adjustments for this deck in set 4. So stay tuned, and thank you, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe, share this around, and stay awesome.